Welcome to our final session of the day for the Northwest Ohio Health and Safety Day. My name is Angie Garner, and on behalf of the entire Safety and Health Day Committee, we appreciate your attendance today. Since 1991, the Northwest Ohio Safety and Health Day has been providing free educational safety and health programs for area employees and employers. We appreciate the support of vendors and sponsors over the years that allow this free program to continue, and for the employers whose employees are made available to participate on our committees. We also like to thank those employers that have allowed the participants to join us today in order to continue with their education. We'd like to take this time to recognize the Safety Council of Northwest Ohio, which is a nonprofit organization that has been serving Northwest Ohio since 1960. The mission of the Safety Council with this network of members is to enhance the quality of life by providing education programs, services that improve safety, health, and environment within our community. The Safety Council offers a wide variety of safety trainings and services to support its mission. The presentation you're attending today is on OSHA's heat proposed stress requirement and an OSHA update presented by Todd Jensen, OSHA Director. Now a little about Todd Jensen. Todd has worked for OSHA for 24 years and was recently promoted to Area Director for the Toledo area office in November of 2021, covering 26 counties in Northwest Ohio. Todd specializes in foundries, steel mills, heavy manufacturing, and process safety management. We ask at this time if everyone would put their computers on mute if not already done, and please turn off your video. If you have questions, you can simply type them into the chat and they will be answered at the end of the presentation in the last 10 minutes. Please keep all chat to the topic and presentation and respect the speaker. And now I'd like to welcome Todd Jensen.
Well, thanks, Angie. Thanks for having me today. Let me share my screen real here, and then we'll get into it. Well, like Angie said, my name's Todd Jensen. I'm with OSHA here in Toledo, Ohio. I'm the new area director. I've been area director since November. I've been with OSHA 24 years. So I've been out there in the field. I've probably met some of you in this presentation today. And I look forward to being the area director in Toledo for a number of years to come. So I'm 49 years old, so I got a while yet before I can retire. So I appreciate everybody being here today. Heat stress and an OSHA update. That's what I've been asked to give some information on, and we're going to cover the heat stress portion of that first. OSHA has an emphasis program right now on heat. We've been instructed to conduct a number of heat-related inspections, over the course of the next 4 or 5 months in various industries, including construction, general industry, healthcare, service industries. And so when our compliance, and I'll get into this during the slides, but when our compliancers go on site, they'll be asking some questions regarding hot processes, hot operations in your facilities, and what you're doing to protect employees from those any heat-related injuries that they may be exposed to, or heat-related hazards. We have OSHA is looking to promulgate a heat standard. Right now they're listing public comments on the standard and what that would look like. I've been told that they're going to try to model it after the California heat program. But like any standard we propose, we look to see what the states are doing, seeing what works, what doesn't, and taking the best of what they're doing. We also look at NIOSH proposed guidelines for heat illness prevention programs. And so I imagine, I haven't seen any rough draft or anything like that, but I imagine they'll be looking heavily at what the state plans have done, what NIOSH has done, and then probably picking the best out of both worlds to come up with a proposed heat standard at some point down the road. But right now they're soliciting public input on what that should look like. So I don't really have any information on what that proposed heat standard is going to look like. I don't even know if it's been written yet. But when it does come out, they'll be given ample opportunity for the for outreach on this new standard. It may be 1 or 2 years down the road. I'm not sure when it's going to come out, but there will be a bunch of media attention around it, public outreach and so forth. So whatever does come out, it won't catch employers flat-footed. You guys will hear about it long before it comes out through your professional organizations, the safety council and so forth. So let's get into heat stress a little bit. What OSHA looks at when we go on site and we run into these hot processes and these situations where employees are exposed to heat, both outside and inside. We're going to look at heat index a little bit, so you kind of get in our minds of what we're looking at out there. And then the last 5 or 6 slides is a little bit of an OSHA update and what we ran into in last year as far as citations and what we're looking for into the future. So heat stress. One thing employers should have is if you have employees exposed to hot processes, whether they're working around heat treat ovens, they're working in steel mills, foundries, or maybe even working in the service industry over hot grills and fryers, or working outside in construction, roofing houses, working out in the elements exposed to levels of high heat. Well, one thing employers need to develop, and this is just a basic guidelines of what NIOSH recommends, is a heat prevention plan. Employees need to be trained. There needs to be a written program, some training on how to recognize the signs and symptoms of heat stress, and a plan on what kind of breaks employees are going to take and so forth. But we always look to make sure that workers are given enough water during the day. Management checks on the workers, and there's a plan for emergencies. If where's the nearest hospital if someone is starting to show signs of heat stress or heaven forbid heat stroke. And one of the big things with heat stress is training. You need to, number one, train the employees on how to recognize the symptoms, but it's important for the co-workers to keep an eye on their fellow workers. If someone's suffering heat stress, sometimes the person that's happening to isn't quite aware of what's going on at the time. Maybe they have quit sweating or they look pale. They have a headache or maybe they're acting a little lethargic or unsteady on their feet. Sometimes coworkers will spot those signs and symptoms before the employee does. So it's a good idea to train everybody on these symptoms and to kind of look out for each other to try to spot these problems before they become bigger problems. But a heat stress prevention plan is something that should be put into place and developed and implemented in your workplaces. It's nothing that we can require at this point, but it's a good idea to do this. Here's the symptoms of heat stroke, heat exhaustion, heat cramps, heat rash. We got confusion, fainting, seizures, excessive sweating, high body temperature. Heat exhaustion is cool, moist skin, heavy sweating, headache, nausea, vomiting, dizziness, weakness, thirst, fast heartbeat. And then you run into muscle spasms, pain, abdominal pain, and eventually, if it gets bad enough, the person will simply lose consciousness. So when compliance officers go on site, there are certain triggers that kick in as far as what we would expect employers to do. And it's all based on the heat index. The heat index is a combination of humidity and actual air temperature. But for employees exposed to a heat index of less than 91, the only thing we would expect employers to do is provide drinking water, know where your medical services are at, and encourage workers to wear sunscreen if they're outside. 91 to 103, this starts getting into a little bit higher level of heat, where you'd want to acclimate your workers to the environment. A lot of times employees who work in hot environments, they'll go on vacation and then they'll come back to work after a week or 2 weeks. And that's when those employees have problems because they're no longer acclimated to that heat and they start having some severe signs and symptoms of heat stress because they've lost that acclimation. So acclimation is the slow process of getting your body used to those hot environments. So between 91 and 103, we worry about acclimation. Drink water often, about 4 cups an hour. Review heat illness and symptoms signs and symptoms to recognize of heat illness, schedule frequent breaks, maybe set up a buddy system to instruct supervisors to watch for other workers for signs of heat-related illness. You may want to schedule those work times in off-peak hours of the day that are cooler, like in the mornings or in the afternoons. I know when it does get really hot out, you hardly ever see any contractors out there roofing houses. They're either roofing them in the morning, taking a break in the middle of the day and coming back later in the day, or some such schedule. And then monitor your workers. Monitoring is the critical point. You train your workers and you got to monitor them. Make sure no one's working when they shouldn't be. Now, if we start getting into heat indexes of 103 to 115, that's when you need to alert your workers of high risk conditions. Let them know it's going to be hot. You guys really need to look after each other. We're going to give you more breaks, more water, because you're starting to get into a danger level here. Limit physical exertion, training employees on the signs and symptoms again, establish and enforce work rest schedules, maybe adjust work activities, use cooling techniques. Maybe we have folks wearing cooling vests, or if it's an inside environment, maybe using more fans, and so forth. And you watch and you communicate with your workers. You need to make sure that you're watching each other and that you're looking out for other employees that may be suffering signs and symptoms. And like the slide before, where possible, reschedule activities to a time when the heat index is lower, either in the morning, at night, or in the afternoon. Now, if we get greater than 115, this is when it's extreme risk. This is, you only need to be out there if you're in a heat index higher than 115, if it's absolutely necessary. We highly encourage activities with this high heat index to be rescheduled to other times of the day, or maybe a different day. Move essential work tasks to the coolest part of the work shift, considering changing work times or split shifts. Strenuous work tasks and those requiring heavy non-breathable clothing or impermeable protective clothing should not be conducted. So if you don't want to send people in to do asbestos abatement or anything wearing a Tyvek suit and a respirator, if they got a heat index of greater than 115, those people are going to cook themselves to death. And protective equipment is always an issue, right? Anytime you have a hot environment, PPE makes it worse. It causes employees to heat up quicker. They can probably work a lot less than what they normally would if they didn't have PPE on. So PPE and heat stress are definitely, they kind of go hand in hand when you hit these higher temperatures and heat indexes. So keep an eye on the PPE. What the protective equipment that may have been marginally tolerable on one day may be inadequate on another day if it creates too much of a heat stress issue. I'm not saying don't wear the PPE, but you may have to postpone that task or figure out a way to do that task differently. Let's see here. If there is essential work that has to be done, maybe there's utility work that has to be done, maybe there's a water line installation that has to be done. If it's essential work, you really need to keep an eye on your workers if you're in a heat index of greater than 115, because they're at severe risk of heat stress and heat stroke. If you can't implement any type of engineering controls or administrative controls to minimize those employees' exposure to these levels of high heat, then you need to stop work. I mean, there's no work worth someone going to the hospital over. We think about heat stress, we think about hot processes, we think about working outside. I've run into heat indexes at about 108 to 110 inside kitchens in the middle of the summer for short order cooks. If you get into some of these food prep kitchens and some of these small restaurants, there's very little air movement, sometimes very poor ventilation, and you got people working over hot griddles, hot skillets all day long. And if it's 100 degrees outside, it's going to be 115 degrees inside. And so, the service industries are one industry where we have a lot of people exposed to the high heat indexes, and we get 2 or 3 complaints every summer from service industry regarding cooks and so forth in the kitchen. So Okay, so we have this emphasis program on heat, where we're going to be on inspections if we're made aware there is a heat-related hazard on the job site, whether they be working close to a piece of hot equipment or a hot process, or maybe we have real roofers out roofing a house and it's 90 degrees out or 95 degrees out. We're going to be taking a look into those processes to make sure the employer is doing something to trying to mitigate those exposures on those employees, and then employees have been trained on the effects of heat stress, the signs and symptoms to look for, and so forth. Heat is a leading cause of death among all weather-related phenomena. 18 to 19 of the last summers were the hottest on record, and as extreme heat gets worse each year, health risks are also increasing. Our goal with this emphasis program is to reduce worker exposures to heat-related hazards. Okay. We get a number of complaints every year related to heat-related hazards. And when we get these complaints, we usually run out on them. With this emphasis program, it's going to be more of an emphasis. So if you have hot processes in your facilities or you're sending employees outside to work and when it's extreme temperatures, it'd be a really good idea to develop a heat prevention program and start training your employees now on the effects of heat and the signs and symptoms to look out for. Maybe letting the foreman know that more frequent breaks may be needed. Make sure you have water available on site for employees to use if they need to. All of these things help reduce any type of incident where heat could be a factor. This emphasis program that we have is going to target over 70 high-risk industries, both indoors and outdoors, landscaping, construction industries, any type of industry that historically have hot processes are going to be one of the 70 that are targeted. And this NEP is on the internet. You can find it. There's a table at the end of the NEP that gives certain NAICS codes of the industries we're going to be targeting. And when we come into facilities where they're either on the NEP or during the course of inspection, we find employees are exposed to heat hazards. In extreme cases, we can use a 5A1 general duty clause, part of the standard to issue citations for heat-related hazards. So generally, to increase the likelihood of preventing heat-related illnesses and deaths, make efficient use of OSHA resources. That's what this program is designed to do. If we go into facilities and we find that there have been people that have lost consciousness due to heat, maybe been transferred to the hospitals and so forth and received the medical treatment, we're going to look to make sure that those types of injuries are recorded on OSHA 300 logs if they meet the criteria. And on heat priority days, which are days that have a heat index of 80 degrees or greater, we will be inquiring about the existence of any heat-related prevention programs. Sometimes when we go into these industries and we ask for these programs, if you don't have anything, we have two options. Either we can issue a 5A1 general duty clause depending on the situation, or we can issue what we call a hazard alert letter to a company. A hazard alert letter is usually just a heads up. It's a warning letter saying, hey, we found these problems. You need to take a look into fixing these issues. So I imagine with a lot of these industries we inspect this summer, there'll probably be a few 5A1 citations coming out of this, but I see quite a few of hazard alert letters also being issued. And hazard alert letters are not citations. So during a heat-related inspection, we're going to review the OSHA 300 logs, 301s, review any heat-related emergency room visits or ambulance transports related to heat, determine if an employer has an injury and illness program addressing heat exposure. We're going to be interviewing people. We're going to document the conditions in the workplace relevant to the heat hazards and so forth. So we're going to do a typical inspection if we walk into a facility and they have sources of high heat where employees are exposed. We're going to take a closer look at those operations to try to try to identify these hazards and remove employees from the hazards, or get engineering controls in place, such as fans, more frequent breaks, and so forth, to try to head this off the path so we can get in there before those employees actually start showing signs and symptoms and getting sick and sent to the hospital. Like I said, general duty clause is going to be a citation that we issue in extreme instances. But there's other standards, right? There's the record keeping standard if employees go unconscious, or if they have to use oxygen or any other type of medical treatment at the hospital. You know, it is recordable. We're going to look at sanitation standards in construction, general industry, to make sure cool, portable water is provided, and then training and education for general construction under 1926-20 and 1926-21. Training and education on the signs and symptoms of heat stress and what employees can do to protect themselves. So there we do have a mixture of standards that we can cite, even though we don't have a heat standard yet to address some of these issues. But, you know, obviously a heat standard would be a lot better. So that's what we have so far on heat and what's coming up with OSHA the next year, and what we're going to be concentrating on this summer. Are there any questions in the chat, or does anyone have any questions on heat before I just start going into the general slides that we have here?
There are no questions in the chat.
All right. All right. Well, if anybody does have any questions, you know, please contact us here at OSHA. You know, we'll be more than happy to help anybody out over the phone, you know, the best we can. If you feel uncomfortable contacting us for some reason, you know, you can always reach out to the Safety Council. You can reach out to Bureau of Workers' Comp or OSHA on-site consultation. All these agencies will be able to help you with any heat-related questions that you have. So, okay, so inspections. Due to COVID, our inspection numbers have been down, just like most people's production schedules have been down. You know, we haven't been able to get out as much over the last couple of years as we once did, but that's picking up now. As of, I think it was May 4th, we're back to 100% in our office. You know, and that's being evaluated on a weekly basis based on COVID cases in the counties that we're in. But yeah, OSHA's back to 100%. We're doing in-person speeches where we're doing inspections just like normal. So we're back to full force right now. We've hired a bunch of new people over the course of the pandemic in our Toledo office. So we got a lot of new compliance officers out there that we're training up right now. We got a set of senior staff as well, but we do have a lot of new folks. I know BWC has a lot of new folks. OSHA Onsite has a lot of new folks. So you know, we've had a big turnover in staff for one reason or another, and so we're kind of like in a rebuilding mode right now. So that's where we sit here in Toledo. But yeah, we're back to 100% now. So the number of inspections that we're going to be doing is going to be increasing. So in 2021, you know, the top 10 violations that we had were fall protection for construction, respiratory protection, primarily because of COVID. We were going into a lot of nursing homes, a lot of hospitals that didn't have respirator protection policies and programs in place. You know, when COVID hit, there was a mad scramble for N95 respirators. And a lot of these companies, God bless them, they did the best they could, and they required N95 use for a lot of their employees, understandably so. But they forgot about our respirator requirements for fit testing, medical evals, and training. So I think that's why respiratory protection bumped up to number 2, is because of the COVID in the last couple of years. Ladders on construction sites are a big one, not being secured, not being extended 3 feet above the edge, being in bad shape, not being removed. Scaffolding continues to be high in construction, and then HAZCOM for general industry. Lockout tagout's always in the top 10. I don't know, we probably get 3 or 4 amputation inspections every week here in Toledo, just in Northwest Ohio. And let's say we get 5, and let's say we get, you know, 15, 20 amputations a month. Probably 90% of those amputations are a result of lockout tagout. We have a lot of folks out there losing a lot of fingers on equipment right now because they're not locking it out, tagging it out properly. And we continue to issue citations on that. Fall protection training in construction, eye and face protection, powered industrial vehicles, and then machine guarding. Those are our top 10 for both construction and general industry. If you have powered industrial vehicles in your facility, make sure that you have your employees trained on those, that they're being evaluated with their hands-on operation of those forklifts, and that those forklifts are being inspected. Those are the big things that we're seeing right now. And also, if you have attachments on your forklift, either to handle 55-gallon drums or spreader bars or extendable booms or anything like that on your forklifts, the data plate on those forklifts have to show those attachments and show what their load centers are and what the capacities are. So if you're using attachments, make sure your data plates on your forklifts are updated to show those attachments. Machine guarding, we're always fighting machine guarding. As long as we'll have machines in factories, we're going to have machine guarding. So that's one we constantly battle. So for construction industry, the other slide was for all industries. For construction, it's fall hazards, ladders, scaffolding, fall protection, eye and face protection when wearing and using air nailers and hard hats, head protections, hard hats, general safety and health provisions. This is the safety and health programs that construction companies are supposed to implement. A lot of them don't have these safety and health programs. Aerial lifts made the top 10 this year. We've had a number of accidents involving aerial lifts, folks being ejected. We've had aerial lifts breaking and the lift, the man basket actually falling off the lift. Trenching is number 9. We issue a lot of citations in trenching because people continue to try to dig 8, 10, 15-foot trenches without a trench box or shoring or any type of cave-in protection. We still run into contractors that continue to do that. So trench is always in the top 10. And then fall protection systems criteria and practices. So this is like maybe a fall protection system isn't hooked up right, or they're using it in a manner that's not intended by the manufacturer. For general industry, the respiratory protection is number 1, right? A beat out HAZCOM. Typically HAZCOM's number 1. But this year, in 2021, respiratory protection became number 1 because of all the COVID cases we were doing in nursing homes, hospitals, the VA, and so forth. Powered industrial vehicles is number 3. Like I said, employee training is right up there. Fort truck inspections is right up there. We see a lot of Fort trucks being operated. There's deficiencies with those Fort trucks, and they're not being taken out of service. Lockout tagout's number 4. Reporting. So we had a lot of folks die of COVID in 2021, and facilities were not reporting those deaths to OSHA. And I think that's why reporting went up to number 5. We would go into a hospital or a nursing home or even a warehousing facility in some instances and find that employees actually more than likely contracted COVID at work because they were exposed to other employees that had COVID, or whether their job duties maybe put them in close proximity to people that had COVID, and they were becoming seriously ill and passing away, and the companies weren't calling us. So that's probably why that's number 5, is not reporting workplace hospitalizations to OSHA. And amputations. General requirements for electrical is number 6. That's just general electrical deficiencies, whether it may be a ground plug missing an extension cord, or a knockout box having knockouts missing, or face plates missing on electrical. It could be a whole slew of things, but it's just general electrical deficiencies are number 6. Wiring methods is 305. That's electrical as well. General protective equipment, 1910-132 is number 8. Then general duty clause made it into the top 10 at number 9. For those of you not familiar with it, we issue a 5A1 citation or a general duty clause citation for hazards that we recognize that there's no OSHA standard written for those hazards. Then we issue a 5A1 citation if we don't have an actual regulation for it. So our general duty clause citation is kind of like a catch-all. We issue a lot of those here in Toledo. Then machine guarding, number 10. That rounds up the top 10 for 2021. So our penalty levels in 2022, I don't know what it was, maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, Congress passed a law that says that our OSHA penalties had to go up with the rate of inflation every year. So every year we get a memo from DC that says our penalties went up this much to keep rate with inflation. For years, our penalties never went up, but like I said, 10 or 15 years ago, that changed. Serious citations. The worst, the high grader, what we call high grader citations, or high severity greater probability. The highest level we can issue for a serious citation has gone up to $14,502. We do issue serious citations lower than that based on the hazards and the employee exposure, but the maximum for a serious is $14,502. Our willful or repeat citations are maxed out at $145,000. Willful citations are when an employer knows the OSHA requirements and they willfully violate the law. Like they send employees in and expose employees knowing that they shouldn't for a various number of reasons. But they know the regulations, they know the requirements, and they just thumb their nose at it and they expose their employees anyways. That's when we start issuing willful citations. Like I said, 145,000. Repeat citations is when a company is cited for something and then within the next 5 years, we come back and we find the same or similar problem. It might not rise to the level of willfulness, but nevertheless, it's a repeat citation. We've issued it once in 5 years. We're finding the same problem now, so we issue a repeat citation. Those can go up to 145. Failure to abate. Where we run into failure to abate is when we issue a citation, we have a settlement agreement, and then we go back to do a follow-up inspection and come to find out the employer never fixed the problem, even though they knew they should have. So for failure to abate citations can be up to $14,000 per day that the employees were exposed. So most citations that we issue in Toledo are what we call other than serious or serious citations. So once in a while we'll run into some willful and repeats. But our outreach events for 2022, obviously we have a heat illness prevention campaign. You're going to be hearing a lot about heat stress, heat stroke, and heat illness prevention all summer from the safety councils and from OSHA and from BWC. It's a really big push. And with the standard coming out, maybe in a year, maybe 2 years, I don't know when, this has become a big, huge topic. So heat illness prevention is number one. Stand up for grain safety, that was last April. This slide deck's a couple months out of date. We have National Work Zone Awareness, that was also in April. Fall Prevention Stand Down is in May. Safe and Sound Week is in August. And then we have Suicide Prevention Awareness Month in September. Suicide prevention is an emphasis of OSHA, especially in the construction fields. Suicide in the construction fields is, I don't know what it was, 3 times higher than any other industry, I believe it is. There's a lot of stresses in construction that lead to that, but yeah, suicide rates in construction are a big concern. And I know the construction trades around Toledo and Northwest Ohio are trying to address this issue. And OSHA's made it an emphasis in 2022. So. Okay, I'm gonna quit sharing my screen here. And I'm gonna just kind of open it up to any comments, any chat questions. I can answer just general questions or any specific questions you may have. It's a pretty quiet group though, but I expect some questions.
Well, everyone's muted right now, so all the questions should come through chat, but I don't see anything in there. Guys, this is your opportunity. You have the Toledo Area OSHA Director on the line. Any questions you have, it'd be a great time to throw them out there.
Yeah, what are we running into out there? I know we've had, let me start it off here. So we've had 6 fatalities in Northwest Ohio in the last 4 weeks. Typically, we have 6 to 7 fatalities a year in Toledo, and we've had 6 in the last 4 weeks. So I got people scrambling right now on fatality investigations, and that's not even including all the amputation and hospitalizations we're looking at. So for some reason, there's been a lot of these types of accidents in Northwest Ohio, and there's really no rhyme or reason to them. There's no root cause that's similar between the accidents. They're all over the board. So just be mindful of that when you're out in your facilities. Lockout, tag out, machine guarding. If you're in healthcare, just double down on your bloodborne pathogens program, respirator programs. If you're in construction or any type of field that's out there, working outdoors, fall protection is always big. So it's the same hazards you normally have, but just be mindful of those, because 6 fatalities in 4 weeks is outrageous, and we don't really know what to do to prevent some of these. There's really no root cause. So.
So one of the questions we have is, are you seeing issues with training new employees due to high turnover?
Yes, and I would say the training is right now. I've seen a lot of training citations go out for forklift operation. They get employees from staffing agencies or just off the street. They'll ask an employee, have you ever driven a fork truck? And they say yes, and they say, okay, get on that fork truck and go for it. So PIV training is big right now. Lockout training is always big. Lockout, tag out training. And then respirator training. We were still in COVID. If you're in healthcare, you're probably still in N95s in some situations. So, if you're in healthcare and your N95s are required to be worn, they're required to have a respirator program, fit testing, training, and medical evaluations to wear those N95s. And we've been preaching respirator requirements to healthcare now for over 2 years. And I continue to write citations every week to nursing homes and hospitals on 134 violations. So I don't know what to do there, but but new employee training on forklifts, lockout, tag out, those seem to be the big ones that we've been issuing a lot of citations on over the last couple months. You guys are quiet.
I think it's been a long day.
I know it's been a long day, and it's like 3:30 in the afternoon too. So, and it's virtual, right? I wish these things could be in person, because I like to chat and shake hands. But what are some of the violations that seem to be overlooked due to lack of knowledge? So what the citations that we run into that are overlooked in facilities. Really, in construction, most employers know what to do, right? They know you, if you're above 6 feet, you got to wear fall protection. But when it comes to general industry, the ones that are overlooked the most is probably electrical safety with the arc flash hazards. Maintenance workers get into all kinds of situations. Regardless of what industry you're in, they get into situations with electricity that they're not following proper safety procedures. And if you got maintenance employees that are troubleshooting with voltmeters, or rewiring in 3-phase electrical motors, or redoing light systems in buildings, maybe replacing all your metal halide lights with LED lights, and they got guys getting into the ballast, changing fuses out inside breaker boxes, things like that. Any type of electrical work that maintenance folks are doing, I think electrical citations are probably a top 5 citation in Toledo, and we've been concentrating on outreach and training in that field for at least 20 years. And so it's one of our top 5 citations, electrical citations. So if you have a maintenance employee, whether that maintenance employee is working in a nursing home or a factory, I guarantee you they get into electrical once in a while. If you go look in their toolbox, you'll find a voltmeter. And if you ask them when the last time was they used it, you'll find the last time that you should have had some electrical protective equipment in place. So electrical citations for employees working with electrical. Other overlooked citations. Operators that get into equipment, to clean equipment, that aren't trained on lockout tagout's a big one. Sometimes employers will say, well, they were just in there cleaning at the end of the day, or they saw a part in there that was sticking, so they went in to unjam it. You know, they may be getting themselves into situations where lockout tagout applies and they don't even know it. We continuously run into, and lockout tagout is not just a maintenance function. Lockout tagout is very much still an operator function. So if you got operators exposed, you know, they're doing anything but just operating that machine, cleaning up, removing stuck parts, oiling, greasing, things like that, you know, lockout tagout probably applies. So take a look at your operators and make sure they're not doing anything that would kick them into lockout tagout, because it's not just a maintenance task. I saw some other tasks, some other questions come up here. Let me see here. What specific electrical citations are you issuing? You know, I call it low-hanging fruit. We're continuing to see the bad extension cords. We're seeing a lot of permanent equipment hooked up with flexible cords. If you have equipment in your facility that's stationary and not being moved around, that equipment needs to be hardwired in. We're seeing a lot of those citations. But as far as electrical citations for maintenance workers, you know, it's all the 1910, 335, 332, 333, 334, 335. We call electrical safety related work practices standards. And we see a lot of maintenance people not having the right protective gear on when they're working with electrical and not locking it out properly. So those are kind of some of the specific electric citations is knockout boxes, missing the knockouts in the side, extension cord, you know, the low hanging fruit stuff, strain relief on cords hanging from the ceiling and so forth. Permanent equipment not wired in permanently using flex cords. From heat stress for the paving industry, if heat degrees is close to 100 degrees or higher, will the employer get a citation if employees took off their hard hats to cool down? You know, it depends on the hazard, right? Some companies require hard hats 100% on site, but with OSHA, you only need to wear a hard hat if there's an overhead hazard. So that's a hard one. You know, it's if they took their hard hats off and there was an overhead hazard, you know, were they just taking their hard hats off to wipe their brow, or they were not wearing hard hats at all? That may be an issue. That's an instance by instance thing. We'd have to take a look into that. You know, it's like, what color are the hard hats? A white color that would reflect some of the heat, or are they dark and black? You know, we would look at that. But yeah, if someone takes their hard hat off to wipe their brow, or just for, you know, 30 seconds or put their hard hat back on and they're running a paving machine, we're probably not going to make a big deal about that. But we are going to look to see, you know, are you providing for frequent regular breaks? Are you providing shade? Do they have an umbrella on that paving machine to keep them out of the direct sun? What are you doing for supplying for water? Are you training your paving contract employees on the signs and symptoms of heat stress? We'd be asking a lot of those questions. You know, what's the systems you have in place to try to identify those employees at risk? What are the current NEPs the Toledo OSHA office is looking for during their inspections? Okay, so we mentioned heat. We've beat that one to death. We have a lot of emphasis programs. The big one is powered industrial vehicles. So if we walk into a facility and you have forklifts, chances are we're going to be taking a look at them just to make sure that they're in good operation, employees are trained. We have lead emphasis programs. So if you're dealing with lead in your facility, we're gonna expand inspections to take a look at that. Silica, we still have our silica NEP. So if you're dealing with silica in your facilities or on a construction site, you know, we'll expand an inspection to look at silica. Oh man, there's a lot of them. Noise is a big one right now. If we walk into a facility and we see a lot of threshold shifts on OSHA 300 logs, or if, you know, plain sight items, if we're in an area where we believe they got levels of high noise over 85, or let's say 90 decibels, and we don't see people wearing earplugs, and we're going to start asking questions and expand our inspection to include noise. But noise is probably a number 2 priority right now with OSHA. in facilities. So any noisy areas, if we get an inkling that something isn't quite right, then we're going to start asking some questions about noise. Falls continue to be a problem. If we're driving down the road on our way to another site and we see a fall hazard, we're going to stop and we're going to address those fall hazards. And we've done that sometimes in general industry where maintenance people will be on the roof of a facility. Maybe they're replacing the belts on an HVAC system or replacing the belts on a fan in the ceiling, and we see folks up there with no fall protection on. We're going to stop and address that, even if it's not construction, if it's any fall hazards at all, and not just off roofs either. If they're on scaffolds and no guardrails or whatever it may be, we're going to stop and initiate an inspection if we see a fall hazard. Got another one. I just lost it. Anyway, so those are the big emphasis programs that we have right now. Gut rehab, yes, gut rehab is still an NEP. So if we see buildings being gutted or rehabbed on the inside, we will stop and do an inspection to make sure if there's any demo on the inside, make sure there's a demolition plan, silica exposures, lead exposures, all those. Once we get into a gut rehab site, other emphasis programs kick in because we see people tuck pointing or shot blasting, or maybe they're scraping paint, who knows what. But usually a gut rehab inspection will get us into 3 or 4 of the other NEPs that we have once we get in there and we see what's going on. So gut rehab is still an issue. So if we see buildings being either renovated, we will stop and open an inspection, and we may open an inspection with every contractor on site. It all depends. There's still a lot of hazards in that specific, I don't want to say industry, but that job of gutting out a building. There's all kinds of hazards. You won't believe the big buildings we've walked into where all the floors are ripped out of it due to water damage from a leaky roof over 20 years. And you go into the buildings, you look up, there's no floors for 15 floors up, and they got guys in there crawling around like monkeys, and there's no demo plan or nothing. It's amazing some of these buildings are even still standing with as much internal structure that's taken out of them, and no demolition plan or anything in place. Sometimes the cities don't even know this work is going on, and so we'll show up to a gut rehab site, and next thing you know, the contractor's in trouble with the city and everybody else. So most contractors do this legitimately, and they got a good plan in place and they're protecting their employers. But once in a while, we do run into a fly-by-night operation on gut rehabs. And then I want to bring that up too. Most employers that we inspect, I'd say 99% of the employers that we inspect are good employers. They're trying to make a product or provide a service. They're trying to do the right thing to protect their employees. And maybe we show up on a complaint or something. We find a few problems with what they're doing, and we move on. They pay a penalty, get a citation, we move on. Most employers are honest employers trying to provide jobs and provide a service. But it's that 1% that we run into. The bad apple ruins the batch, right? There's that 1% that we run into, and it could be either a construction contractor or a manufacturing facility where they just don't care. They don't care if their employees get hurt. All they want to do is make a buck. And it's that 1%. Those are the places OSHA needs to be in. Most places we don't need to be there. You get most facilities have a decent health and safety program. They're trying to do the right thing, but they may be lacking a little bit. But there are some employers out there where we need to be, and those are the ones we strive to get to. I think that's all the comments so far.
I don't see anything else in there.
All right.
Okay, well, if we don't have anything else, then we will go ahead and close out. Todd, I want to thank you so much for your time today and coming in and talking with our group. And then to all the attendees, I want to thank you all for joining us for another successful Health and Safety Day. Thank you so much. Everyone have a great day and have a safe day.
Be able to reach out to us if you have any questions. You know, we're not going to come out and do an inspection just because you call us. So if you don't feel comfortable calling OSHA, then get a hold of BWC or the local safety council and they can act as an intermediate or answer your questions outright. But if you got a question, please make sure you reach out and try to get the correct answer on it.